It's with a heavy heart that I take up my pen to write these, the last words in which I shall ever record.
There is a strange moment in the Granada Sherlock Holmes series when Dr. Watson disappears. Well, not the character, not exactly. Watson is still there. He still walks into Baker Street, listens to Holmes, records the cases. He still provides the warmth, sanity, and ordinary human decency without which Sherlock Holmes would be almost unbearable. But the face has changed, and somehow many viewers barely noticed it at first watch. Today we talk about David Burke, the first Watson of the Jeremy Brett era, the actor who quietly rescued Dr. Watson from decades of screen humiliation, and the man who left one of the greatest television detective series just as it was becoming legendary.
You don't mind breaking the law?
Not in the least.
Nor running the chance of arrest?
Not in a good cause.
Oh, the cause is excellent.
Well, then I am your man.
Splendid.
David Burke was born in Liverpool in 1934 and trained at RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. Before Sherlock Holmes, he was already a serious working actor with a long stage and television career behind him. He was not some unknown man suddenly picked out of nowhere to stand beside Jeremy Brett. In fact, theatre seems to have been his great love. He had worked on stage, played Shakespeare, built the sort of career British actors often had before television fully swallowed everyone. Repertory, classical roles, guest parts, serious drama, the whole respectable old-school actor's route. So when Granada Television came calling, Burke was pleased, naturally. As he later joked, the heart of a jobbing actor always beats a little faster at the mention of a TV series.
There is an element of truth in what you say.
Ah!
But he also had reservations, because the role was Dr. Watson, and Dr. Watson by that point came with baggage. For much of the 20th century, Watson had been treated on screen as the slightly dim sidekick, lovable, loyal, but often foolish. This image was especially shaped by Nigel Bruce's Watson in the famous Basil Rathbone films, charming in its own right, but quite far from Doyle's original character. So it turned out Burke was not being asked to play just any supporting role. He was being asked to rescue a character who had been turned into a joke.
Because not the duffer anymore, but the good friend, the gentleman, the medic and the soldier, not the duffer.
David himself found the idea rather funny. He later confessed that he worried about playing a man with serious claims to being the most ordinary character in English literature. When he told his wife, actress Anna Calder-Marshall, she apparently looked at him with genuine puzzlement and said, in effect, "What's your problem? It's you to a T."
You have made the wrong diagnosis, Doctor.
A serious actor, a man who had played Othello, now being told by everyone around him that he was born to play Dr. Watson.
How absurdly simple.
There is something beautifully ironic about that, but also something very accurate. If Dr. Watson is very like me, it is also true that lots of people are very like Dr. Watson, which has much to do with his success. This way, what made his Watson so special is simple. Burke made Watson relatable without making him small.
Oh, my dear Watson, however did you deduce that?
By simply applying your methods, Holmes.
Indeed.
His Watson is a trained doctor, a former soldier, a man who has lived through war and injury, but has not lost his curiosity or appetite for life. You believe he has a medical past and has seen unpleasant things. You believe people would trust him in a crisis. And quite importantly, you believe Sherlock Holmes would actually want him nearby. I'm convinced, Burke once said, that it is not the detective side of the stories or even the thriller element which makes them last. It is because they are the story of a great friendship, an old couple who formed a highly successful partnership by complementing each other.
Good heavens, Holmes. How you startled me.
It is still necessary to take every precaution.
This is where Burke gets the role exactly right. He doesn't play Watson as stupid or say as Holmes' servant, and he doesn't try to make Watson secretly as brilliant as Holmes, which is another modern trap. He simply plays him as a good, brave, intelligent man standing beside a genius. In fact, it is more than enough, because Watson's job is not to outshine Holmes. His job is to make Holmes human. Jeremy Brett's Holmes was electric, intense, and sometimes almost frightening. He could seem elegant one moment and impossible the next. Without the right Watson, that kind of Holmes could easily become too much. Too cold, too sharp, or too theatrical.
I shall call early tomorrow morning.
You'll call there?
And as my own self. And with the king.
The king?
And with you, Watson. You must be a witness at the end of our quest.
Burke prevents that, yet certainly has his own mischief and a twinkle in the eye. You feel that this man has developed a complete private method for surviving Sherlock Holmes. His Watson is social, even flirtatious, a man with manners, appetite, humor, curiosity, and just enough boyish enthusiasm to make you believe he genuinely enjoyed being dragged into danger by the most difficult man in London. And that is why their partnership works so beautifully. Burke was interesting enough to carry attention on his own, yet he never looks as if he's trying to upstage Brett. That balance is incredibly difficult. Too little presence and Watson disappears. Too much and the whole Holmes-Watson structure collapses. Burke lands exactly in the middle. He makes Watson visible without making him vain.
You cannot deny that I am right.
Ah, Watson, you could not be further from the truth.
And then he left. David Burke played Watson in the first 13 episodes of Granada series from 1984 to 1985. And these were not minor episodes. He was there for A Scandal in Bohemia, The Speckled Band, The Naval Treaty, some of the most important stories in the Holmes universe.
It was a great shock at the beginning because David and I had been together for about a year and a half and built up a great rapport.
Then came the final problem. Holmes apparently dies at Reichenbach Falls. Watson is left grieving. The series reaches one of the most famous breaks in all detective fiction. And when Holmes returns in the empty house, Watson returns too, but now played by Edward Hardwicke. As recastings go, this should have been dangerous. Watson is not a decorative part. He's the narrator, the emotional center, the audience's entry point into Holmes' world. Change Watson and you risk changing the entire atmosphere of the series.
He is the Napoleon of crime, Watson. For years I have endeavored to break through the veil which shrouded him. And now I'm ready to close on him.
If he doesn't close upon you first.
Somehow it worked. In fact, the transition from Burke's to Hardwick was about as smooth as possible. I remember when I first watched the series, I didn't even properly notice the change at once. Which sounds absurd because, of course, they're two different actors. But emotionally, and I don't know how, even visually, Watson still felt like Watson. And I'm clearly not alone in this. Many viewers say the same thing. They knew something had changed, but the essence remained so stable that the switch felt almost natural. Jeremy Brett himself said something similar, and even some crew members kept calling Edward David at first, And it says a lot about how carefully the role was passed on.
Edward is a very gentle person and was very sensitive and tried very hard not to upset the boat or shake the boat in any way, and succeeded. And what could have been a disaster for the series turned into a bonus.
Yes.
Another part of the reason it works is timing. The change happens between the final problem and the empty house. In the story, Holmes has been presumed dead. Watson has lived through grief. Time has passed. So when Watson comes back slightly different, a little older in feeling, less boyish, more worn, it actually makes emotional sense.
Yes, indeed, Holmes. I can hardly believe my eyes.
Burke is the younger Watson, energetic, charming, and delighted by the adventure. Hardwick is the later Watson, wiser, calmer, more protective, and perhaps more aware of what friendship with Sherlock Holmes cost. And that is useful because my next video will be about Edward Hardwicke himself, the Watson who had the almost impossible task of replacing someone audiences already loved.
You're interested.
Indeed.
So why did Burke leave? Not because of scandal or rivalry, as it often happens. There was no conflict with Jeremy Brett, and not because Granada pushed him out. The reason was much more ordinary and, frankly, much more Watson-like. Burke left for family and theatre. He had the chance to return to the Royal Shakespeare Company, and his wife was also a serious actress. They had a toddler son, Tom, the future actor Tom Burke, and the demanding filming schedule in Manchester made family life difficult. Some accounts also mentioned that Tom needed medical treatment as a child, and Burke didn't want to leave his wife managing everything alone while he was away filming. Although it will be unfair to ignore Burke's own words when he confessed that he did indeed suffer from not having more to say and do as Watson. Like in his quest of being funny while remaining credible, he had exhausted all possible means to convey the good doctor's amazement and admiration for his resident genius. And yet, despite the role's obvious limitations, Burke didn't leave because it failed him. Whatever the exact balance of reasons, he finally took the ultimate decision because real life had a stronger claim, and that is strangely fitting.
I'm afraid I must go back, Holmes.
Of course.
And I'll join you there later.
A good plan.
The actor playing the loyal, practical, decent doctor made a loyal, practical, decent decision. He walked away from what would become one of the most beloved detective series ever made because theatre, marriage, and fatherhood mattered. You can be disappointed as a viewer, but it is very hard not to respect it. What is fascinating is that David Burke stayed in the series for only 13 episodes, and his Watson still has a strong following 40 years later. Indeed, many actors need years to become definitive in a role. Burke did it almost instantly, partly because the early Granada episodes are so strong, but mostly because he understood Watson at the exact level where others so often fail. And luckily, he didn't vanish from the Sherlock Holmes world completely. Years later, he returned to the Holmes universe. In 1995, he took part in the TV documentary Sherlock Holmes, the Great Detective, once again appearing as Dr. Watson, a small but rather lovely coda to his brief Granada run. And in 2007, he was a presenter in another doc, The Shackles of Sherlock. He also continued working across British television, including appearances in the wider, cozy mystery world. He appeared in Poirot with David Suchet in Hickory Dickory Dock episode, and later in Midsomer Murders. His wife, Anna Calder Marshall, also appeared in Midsomer Murders and even in The Eligible Bachelor, the last TV movie of the Sherlock Holmes series in 1993, which gives the whole thing that very satisfying British television feeling where everyone is connected by one suspicious village, one vicarage, and probably one poisoned jar of pesto.
Why, the bullet's still there.
So a third shot must have been fired.
Which means that a third person must have been present.
Exactly.
For better or worse, for many viewers, David Burke will remain first and foremost Watson. Not because he stayed the longest, he didn't. And not because he had the most tragic story, not at all. But because, for one perfect early stretch of Granada's Sherlock Holmes, he made the character feel right. He made Watson warm, capable, funny, brave, attractive, and human. He gave him that boyish spark. He gave him loyalty without stupidity, admiration without servility, and decency without blandness. That is why people still miss him.